You are listening to bangradio.net.
What's happening, guys? Steve Mayeda here with Bang Radio episode 70. This is part 2 of episode 69's. And hey, man, some cool stuff. We're going over some very complex dialogue stuff. And actually, I talk about what we do in our workshops. If you really want to get involved in this, go to venusianarts.com/forum, sign up, get interactive on that. Man, that forum is blowing up. We are changing the face of social dynamics. You know what I'm all about. It's all about authenticity here. It's all about being yourself and plugging that into an amazing social dynamics. And that is where we're taking this, man. Where we're taking it is second to none. Now, if you want to get involved in this and what this is all about, and actually if you want to prepare, the best thing that you can do before you take a VA boot camp is to sign up on VA Evolve. It's a 3-month program, and actually you can go beyond that, where we join up on calls 3-4 times a week. There's seasoned men that are on every call, including myself on every call. That's a lot of time, man. I'm spending 10 to sometimes 20 hours a week interacting with guys, coaching, because, hey, I love it. That's one thing about me, man. I've been doing this for a long time, non-stop. And VA Evolve has been around for 5 years, unbroken, over 20 courses back to back. Every 3 months, every 4 months, we're doing a new one. So pretty powerful stuff. That's where this call comes from, and that's where we actually ask the question about how we can get into that normal conversation, how we can structure that conversation using pivot points. In fact, we talk about that a little bit more in episode 69. On 70, we talk about the specific pivot points on what you do to open, how to get rapport, how to isolate, or how to seduce, because you either want to go seduction or rapport, and how we escalate and state intent. If you can do those qualities, man, you can move your social dynamic at a very efficient level and a very good speed. It's exactly what you need to know as a beginner. Anyway, let's get into the podcast. Thanks for watching. Steve Mayeda signing off. So that is really like in the phase of opening, very important. Now, if we wanted to move to isolation, there's a whole bunch of different isolations, right? There's pulling somebody away and moving with them. There's isolating within the group. So there's like 3 or 4 people. Actually, this one time I was at Halcyon and this guy was like, I want to see you talk to that girl and isolate this girl. And actually, I can't blame him, because I was like, you got to think what you want to do in advance and then be able to do it. And then, you know, you could be wrong or right, but you have a point of reference. So then he starts telling me what he wants me to do and saying, well, I'm paying you to do it. Man, that's the worst way to talk to a coach. Let me tell you how shitty that is. Because then after you do it, then it's like, all right, motherfucker, now you do it and shut the fuck up. But he had told me to isolate this one girl as a group of 6 girls, and they were sitting down. Anyway, it actually didn't work out that I isolated her and I isolated this other girl. It was actually really cool. They were all Israeli, and it was an immediate advantage because I was like, hey, I lived with an Israeli. Are you just Jews or are you Israeli? Because there's a difference. But anyway, so we all went into all this conversation and yada, yada. And actually, the girl that I ended up talking to most, she's studying sex at UT with Dr. David Buss. So connection there. But anyway, the interesting thing about that is when you're isolating, you just need to make it clear. Okay. Now, sometimes you'll naturally isolate, and if there's a bunch of people, here's actually a good rule of thumb. If there's 3 people, 2 people are going to isolate. If there's 2 people, you don't have to talk to both of them. Talk to fucking one of them. Fuck that group theory shit. The other girl can text on her phone, right? She's not gonna wreck anything unless you're fucking up. If that girl wants to talk to you, she'll be annoyed, and she will eventually try and pull her away. But she can only pull her away if that girl is done talking to you. And it's pretty easy to do. Okay, so anyway, the thing is that if you are able to, actually, I wasn't done explaining something. Sorry, brain a little bit off. Hey, that's what happens when you're 37. But if it's a group of 3, 2 will go off and talk to each other. Don't worry about the group theory. You can acknowledge them, but don't worry about talking and entertaining them. Have your hips and shoulders facing the one person you want to talk to. And of course, it can change throughout the interaction. 4 people, going to move apart even quicker. 5 people almost instantly. Off the opener, 5 people are going to be paying attention to you. Within that opener, 3 people are going to branch off and 2 people are going to talk to you within a minute at max. So less than a minute. One person will be talking to you. Be close to them. So the bigger the group is, the harder it will be to maintain. And if you are maintaining it, you're just entertaining. So you just want to talk to one person. Now, if I want to isolate further, or if I want to isolate her personality, her emotions, so she's giving me even more attention, I need to say something. So the easiest, most simple, old school mystery method thing that I learned was like, hey, you seem pretty cool, but I'm not so sure about you. Before Strawberry Fields or whatever. Like I said, I haven't done it many times, probably done it like under 20 times, but very effective framing routine. But I've done other augmentations of that shit. And I just say, hey, man, you seem cool, but I want to ask you something. Like, come here for a second. They don't need to walk 10 feet away. They just need to turn and face you. Get good at that. Get good at also saying, hey, you know what? I can't hear you over here. Come over here. Just turn. Give them a different visual field of view so they're not staring at their friends. Hey, you know what? I want to ask you something I don't want anybody to hear. Get good at saying those things. That would be huge for you. They don't need to move away. I don't really do it. You can do that for fun. It can be a challenge. It's kind of cool, but not that big of a deal. Huge transitionary statement, okay, to isolate. Now, if I want to isolate an emotion or a state of mind or a certain, presence or something like that, and we talked about this with sex and seduction, I could do an interrupt. Ha ha ha, that interrupt comes in handy. I'm telling you, man. These people, when you're doing these basic remedial exercises, they're really helpful. They might seem stupid, but they will help you so much once you can learn to be a little bit more creative with them. But you can do that interrupt and say, hey, you know what? You seem really confident. Like, let me actually ask you something. Or let me tell you a story about confidence. And you can transition to a story or a rapport cycle or whatever, some routine about confidence. In fact, it was brought up by Zuzu on the call earlier. Like Steve used to say that if you sensed confidence, you could say, hey, did you grow up with a lot of siblings, a lot of brothers and sisters? Are you an older sibling? Did you grow up really fast? You could say all sorts of different things like that to move in that direction. And you don't have to be right, but you're just noticing something unique about them, right? So it's good to isolate an emotion or a characteristic in that way. If it has to do with sexuality, of course, you always hear me nagging into it. Oh man, I can't talk to you. You're so prude or whatever. And that just gets a push pull back to it. But I could say, hey, you know what? I want to ask you something. And your friends might think this is kind of weird. And it's serious, but it's totally funny at the same time. But are you somebody, and I don't mean this in the whatever way. See, there's that buffer again. I don't mean this in an offensive way. So you're cool. We're mature here. Yeah. And then you say like, well, look, are you somebody that you would consider yourself like a really, maybe not sexually aware, but sensually aware person? Okay. So notice even what happened there. It's like, maybe not somebody that is like really into rough, like crazy porn, gangbang sex. But when you're intimate with somebody, you are like a cat's out of the bag. All right. So I'm actually saying like maybe you're not somebody that is going to impulsively buy whatever product, but when you know what you want, you don't wait. So it's just a way to kind of ease in an edgier conversation in a non-committal way. Okay. So that's another thing that I'll do when I transition into a harder topic or to access a different emotion. We want to access non-judgment. We could say something like, again, isolate it. Hey, look, we're talking about all this stuff. You're amazing. I just want to cut to the chase here. Doing an interrupt, right? Just doing that quick interrupt and saying, hey, let me just cut to the chase here. You're an open-minded person, but in a way that's really awesome. Actually, when I did my interview with Ted Rice the other day, when I listened to his podcast, because it kept coming up on the feed, right? And he's on the Art of Charm. I'm like, this guy like has a weird cadence when he talks, all sort of stuff. It took me a while to get used to, but then he started saying stuff that was really cool. He started talking about different concepts of anger and resentment. And this guy saw some like crazy fucked up shit. You can read about it on the Wikipedia page or listen to his podcast, but he went through some horrifying traumatic stuff as a kid. And basically like his ideas on forgiveness or awareness, or he's like, we have to have empathy, but not sympathy. So we have to feel people, but to feel sorry for him takes a different element, yada, yada, yada. He's just a very wise guy. So I actually told him on the interview, I'm like, no, man, I actually really like your show because, you guys still there? It cut for a second. But I said, I really like your show because you're a guy that really gets it. There's not like you say a lot of self-helpy stuff, but I can tell you've experienced it. I didn't know how to articulate it, but I wanted to make it really clear that, hey, if I was going to have a conversation with him, I want it to be, I want him to know that I see him at a deep level and that let's talk at that deep level. So isolating that emotion or that phase of rapport is really, really important. Okay. Now, here's something that came up in the call earlier was we started to use transitionary statements towards sex that were like, hey, you know what? When you were talking, 2 minutes ago, that was fucking awesome. Excellent thing. Excellent thing. Because I don't want to get into the science of why it works because I don't fucking know. But I'll tell you this. I do it all the time and it snaps people into a different persona and a deeper sense of talking to them. So I'll be talking to them about whatever, and we're into it. We're hitting it off. Usually it's great. We're having a great conversation. We're in rapport. Maybe we're 10 minutes, maybe we're 20 minutes. And I want to transition. I want to augment this conversation from feeling good to feeling really good. Maybe it's to hit destiny, to be like, man, I really like talking to you. Maybe it's to hit sexuality. But I'll say, hey, you know what? When I was talking to you, and this is going to sound totally stupid, so I'm just picking something from the past. God, I forget what we were talking about. It was like 5 minutes ago, but we were looking at each other and it made me think about my childhood. And you just remind me of feeling comfortable. Man, now I'm being stupid. It's just totally fucked up. So in that, what's happening there, actually, I said, I don't know, so I can't really explain it. But what happens there is intense connection and rapport happens. And actually, I don't want some motherfucking NLP guy emailing me about this because I've been doing stuff like that, this specific saying for probably like 7 or 8 years. Talked to a lot of NLP people about it. You don't know why the fuck it's happening either. Okay. But and it cut again. I'd like to talk to an actual, real psychologist, type person about it who studies this stuff. And, hey, I'd like to know what Daniel Goleman or Paul Ekman says about certain things like this. But the thing is that if I wanted to transition or slingshot myself into a deeper rapport, I could pull something from the previous conversation or previous experience from them, state how unique it was, and then transition to transition basically to a different topic. Okay. And so where we've all heard this is like, hey, you know what? 2 minutes ago, you were talking about whatever, you got really into it. Man, that really turned me on. And then pull away from it. But that experience, here's what where I see it as, is I'm talking about something in the past that was an intimate moment. Something happened, something exchanged. You affected me, I affected you in a way that had this specific title to it. It turned me on. It made me feel comfortable. It made me feel safe. It made me just not know how to say this, but I want to hang out with you more. It made me know that if I was going to talk to you, for 2 more weeks or whatever, something crazy would happen. It made me know that I needed to see more of you, but I didn't know how. So that's like a big thing. And that actually it came from Shaft. That was a straight up Shaft thing. And CJ actually went off about a whole bunch of interesting, CJ actually had a lot to say about NLP with that, which was actually really, really impressive to hear. But I hate to say it, even when I talk to like guys like Ross or whatever that are known for it, it's like, oh, well, all right. Yeah. Like, sometimes I hear guys when they're talking about NLP or social dynamics, they tell me what it is to put a definition on it, but in no way does it help me think and take it further. But I remember a conversation with Shaft and with CJ about it, and it made me think beyond the point of wants and desires and urges, because there was a creativity. And this is just a side trip, and then I got to wrap this up. But what was so interesting about when we would talk, and we would all talk a lot, and I actually I thought more came out of my talks with Shaft because he was so creative and just so nuts in his thought. And he was a very smart guy, physicist as well, physicist, electrical engineer, and doctor. So medical doctor. And he practiced in both of them. So a very sharp dude, but his mom, hypnotherapist, and really, really just had it in his blood, man. But I remember when CJ and him were talking about this and the different NLP structures, it wasn't like, oh, this happens there and that's why, and cool, the frame's set. It was like, man, this happens there. And with this, what if it changed a little bit? And would that frame actually hit physical arousal with her? Because I think it would, and maybe if it interacted with the subpersonality, and they'd go off on this stuff and talk about the different particulars of it, of what happens in that phase. And that was something that Shaft was big on. He's like, let's look at that girl and just go, what would it take to psychologically move her into a different, realm that she doesn't even know exists? What would that take? And so we think about it. Of course, we think about the logistics, like, oh, it would take isolation. Oh, it would take, some sort of comfort. But what could I say? And then how could, when she starts to interact and I start to get her vibe and what she likes and doesn't like, how would I be able to change within it? And so that sort of creativity is a little bit better. That's, one thing that you'll see with me is there's never an absolute and there never is a definition. I'll say, yes, sex is this, sex is that, sex isn't this, sex isn't that. But if something is within the language of sex that I do agree with, I am open to it moving in all sorts of different ways that, because it can. Because for every human being and weird combination on this planet, there's a different pattern of escalation that we want to move to. So I really think that sort of creativity is key. The man that says he knows it all is somebody who has already lied to himself about, the process of the nature of things. And hey, I hope you like that. That is what we need to do. We need to learn to structure our conversations in that way. Episode 69 and 70, watch them. Or, man, go to iTunes. Man, look, go to iTunes or go to Stitcher and sign up there. Subscribe to it. It's endless amounts of content. You can even scroll way back to the very first episode. But we put out about 7 to 10 episodes a week on iTunes and Stitcher. So definitely get plugged in there. It's a good thing. Sign up on VenusianArts.com at the forum. And it's the shit. Let's start to interact. Get on VA Evolve if you can afford it. If you can't, man, keep watching this stuff. Be a part of our family, because that's what we're here for. Look, we're here for really reshaping social dynamics and sexuality in men, so it's something that you could be proud of. All right, so that you could be honored to be a sexual man. You could walk out in public and be the greatness that you were born to be. All right, social dynamic to be the better man. VA Evolve. Let's do it, guys. Thank you so much for watching and supporting. Talk to you guys soon.